Oh, hello and welcome to What Are We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. I am him. I am here with Caleb B. Davis, and we are here to do an instant reaction to RayGQue's 5 players I can't stop drafting in Best Ball Fantasy Football. So if you don't follow the channel, it's a very popular recurring theme that they have on the Underdog Fantasy Football channel is they have a guy that comes in, an analyst, a famous guy, a guy who knows a lot about fantasy football, and he goes over his 5 favorite players to draft in Best Ball Fantasy Football. If you're not into Best Ball Fantasy Football, you should be. And if you want to be, you can go on to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code JMJKSHB and get your first deposit matched by Underdog Fantasy. I am sitting here with Caleb B. Davis, and I think this is going to be fun because I think a lot of times on the show, they will pull punches. They won't disagree. They won't be super combative. And we don't have to because we don't know them. We're not friends with them.
Yeah,
so we can we could be a little bit more honest with how we feel about their picks. Caleb, you ready for this, buddy?
Yes.
So let's go. 5 names today. Who is up first? We're going to go in ADP order like always.
ADP order. Got to talk about the man who is back on the field. Second season from returning from some suspension. Calvin Ridley. Cannot stop drafting Mr. Calvin Ridley. And a lot of that has to do with what he was able to do last season, second in the NFL in total routes run. You look at some of his success.
So I'm all the way in total disagreement with Calvin Ridley.
Well, I disagree with him as well. I'm actually mad now that I agree with you. No, I really couldn't be more low on Calvin Ridley myself. Like, I mean, outside of whatever the quote unquote problem is you want to say he had in Atlanta that got him to Jacksonville last season. He had a fantastic season in Jacksonville. There's no questioning that. He overperformed in my eyes. I did not expect him to be as explosive as he was last year. And even then there was a little bit of faltering.
Did he really perform that well though?
Well, I think he started the year off, and I was going to say, I think
week 1 he had an amazing week 1.
Yeah, he faltered it a little bit later in the year when it kind of just came back to reality. I don't think you're going to see that level of production.
He wasn't very efficient. And what the guy said, what Ray says is he led the league in yard or routes run last year, and he wasn't ultra productive in those routes, just barely over 1,000 yards receiving.
Yeah.
And you were paying a premium price tag. He's not on that same team.
Yeah, no, he's not.
This year. He's on a different team, and he's got a rookie quarterback throwing him, or a second year quarterback who's going to be worse than most of the rookies.
Which is arguably worse than being a first year.
Because we know
QB.
who he is. Will Levis, I don't know. There's always, I feel like the Steelers were the team last year where there's like a year 2 quarterback and everyone's so optimistic. It's like, it's going to be better this year. Yeah. And I just am sitting here asking the question, why is it going to be better?
And Kenny Pickett's already not on that team.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Will Levis could just be totally terrible and
be the next quarterback in Tampa.
He'll say later in this, I've already watched it through, he'll say guys like Keenan Allen are going right by him, and he'd rather have Calvin Ridley. I don't like that. I think Caleb Williams is going to be better than Will Levis. But the guys you're getting after, Xavier Worthy, guy I love, Chris Godwin, guy who severely underperformed, should have caught an extra few more touchdowns last year. Lad McConkey, DeAndre Hopkins. These are all guys that I want way, way ahead of Calvin Ridley.
Not even too far after that. I mean, I am a homer in this one, but I kind of like Jordan Addison in that position better than Calvin
Sam
Ridley.
Darnold will be throwing the football. I don't know. I'm a little bit lower on Jordan Addison. He had a great season last year. He's going to be a little bit different situation this year, especially if Justin Jefferson stays healthy. Mm-hmm. He's not going to get as many routes on the field.
In comparison to that pick, though, of Calvin Ridley, I would be a lot more optimistic to draft Jordan Addison than I would with Calvin Ridley.
So we are both full on in disagreement with his first player here, taking Calvin Ridley. And just where he's going. Like, if he was a little bit cheaper, I wouldn't mind him. But wide receiver 35, he's also going right before Anthony Richardson and James Cook. So I'm never going to, in a million years, even for the sake of diversifying my portfolio, if I had 1,000 Anthony Richardsons and James Cooks and 0 Calvin Ridleys, I'll take 1,001 of Anthony Richardsons and James Cooks over Calvin Ridley. It's just, it's just like a non-conversation starter. CJ Stroud, whatever, if you're into that sort of thing. And then Xavier Worthy, guy who has big home run potential this year, especially in best ball. He doesn't need to be consistent.
Yeah.
He just needs to catch a couple bombs from the best quarterback in the league. Chris Godwin, home run hit. I'm not big on Rashad White or Joe Mixon, but if you're into that, I'm happy for you. Rome Odunze, I definitely wouldn't take over Calvin Ridley, but Kenneth Walker even. You know, we're scrolling down the list. I'm like, Kenneth Walker, like, hell yeah, give me a bell cow back instead of Calvin Ridley, who is, in my opinion, is a lot of question marks here, as I actually in real life draft Anthony Richardson.
Hell yeah.
I saw to peel the onion back a little bit. I went to pull the ADPs up and get like a screenshot, and I accidentally entered a full draft room. So I am drafting while we're recording this.
Yeah, he's committed. I fucking respect the passion, and that's strike 2. I'll also mention I have not seen this video prior to right now. Jamie has, and so that's just him being a good host. But me, I am actually live reacting. Honestly,
So instant reaction for me, and I'm just for sake of brevity going to kind of paraphrase a lot of things that I say. I might not say things the way he presented him, which might not be too fair to him, but it's not going to matter because I kind of agree with the rest of his picks. The second one I'm kind of so on.
And I will be here to mix it up.
Okay, so if Calvin Ridley is your first selection here, on some level, his replacement might be your second selection here.
I love it. Brian Thomas Jr. He is the mosquito catcher, the light that you just shine, and then you're just like, how dumb are you? You keep just that is
we're all attracted to it.
I could be building a Cowboys Eagles team, a Rams and Cardinals.
Keon Coleman, sidebar. Keon Coleman going ahead of DeAndre Hopkins and Brian Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and David Montgomery. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
what are we like? He might not even start for the Bills, though, and especially the way they're talking about him. They drafted him with a pretty early draft pick, so you'd expect them to be a little bit more optimistic. But the GM, the head coach, is getting out in front of everybody and being like, "Hey, this guy's not ready." Like in the nicest way possible. They're like, "He's going to develop into something great." Concerning film in college, we talked about it during the draft.
Yeah,
concerning film in college, concerning production efficiency in college, and Buffalo Bills. Curtis Samuel, they paid Curtis Samuel. They brought him in. I don't think Khalil Shakir will be a big threat to him.
He will
Chase
not.
Freaking Claypool. Yeah. Sounds like he's the number one X there.
And they've got Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox too, right? At tight end spots. So like
James Cook, Josh Allen running the football. Like where are the Keon Coleman points? Anyways, so
that's a interesting thing though, because Keon Coleman's in a very disputable position, and like to your credit, they're talking about him being a developmental guy, and that is what seems like the nicest thing they have to say about him outside of, we just have so many stacked guys in this room.
It's not stacked, but
they could play that angle in terms of what they've vested in his draft interest. Like, I mean, being a first round talent and then being disclosed to everybody is like, we're working on him. Yeah. Why are you getting drafted there?
Big red flag. But let's talk about what he was talking about, which is Brian Thomas Jr. He was the number 2 behind Neighbors, which is, I think Neighbors might just be an all-pro his rookie year. And Brian Thomas, a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience actually in playing football. He was kind of a late to football kid and hit the ground running. Obviously ends up at LSU and balls out with Jaden Daniels. And a lot of his routes, it just is like, yep, he's open. Yep, he's open. Yep, he's open. But if you're Daniels, rightfully so, you're just gonna chuck it to Neighbors more times than not. So I love Brian Thomas. Where he's going, it's just so cheap. Wide receiver 42. The only problem is I sort of like Hopkins. I sort of like Deontay Johnson, but in this range, I'm just like, every single time, just give me more Brian Thomas. And I expect Christian Kirk to be the number 1 there, but I don't mind getting both. And we almost did in the live draft that we just did. I get them both all the time and pair them with a cheap Trevor Lawrence. Who's going to run the football again this year for 400 yards probably. And Brian Thomas could just hit the ground running, be the number 1 over there and be a complementary piece to Christian Kirk, and they kind of share a lot of the targets together. Where they're going in drafts, I think they're just great values.
Yeah, and his franchise has not said they're really working on him. You know? He's doing great.
Yeah,
so.
I haven't heard of much glowing, shining things about him so far in the offseason, but I haven't heard any bad things either.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't want to harp on Keon Coleman too much. So let's just kind of move on to. So we're both in agreement. Brian Thomas is our guy as well.
Yeah.
Let's move on to his third most drafted player here.
Who is it?
Oh, this is one I think we're going to have some conversation about. I was sort of pre-warned in the.
I'm drafting Brian Thomas.
He drafted Brian Thomas. I saw it
pre-show about Rashee Rice, and I
Rashee
do watch and
Rice.
listen to
Are
you two
you
gentlemen
shitting?
quite a bit. I love everything that y'all do, but I too love me some Rashee Rice.
This is
the same way I love Brian
basketball, by
Thomas.
the way.
So to his credit, he's kind of referencing
ADP.
No. He's referencing tournament style best ball, where week 17 is the most important thing. So before I dig into it too much, you have to admit that if he only gets 4 weeks, which I don't know, maybe there's a 25% of that happening. I think it's gonna be closer to 6 to 8.
Yeah.
If it's 8, you're screwed, right? Either way, terrible value. Where you're drafting Rashee Rice, he's in that same neck of the woods of the guys we were already talking about.
Yeah.
And well before Curtis Samuel. If all my guys are gone and Rashee Rice has fallen in ADP, I'm still scrolling down a scroll or two to get Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm doing. It doesn't make sense to me. And he defends himself by saying that he drafted Alvin Kamara last year and that worked out. I'm like, that was a little bit of a different situation. It wasn't a reckless driving thing.
Yeah.
Drugs in the car, right? And then a second offense afterwards that got settled kind of outside of court quickly.
I think the thing about Rashee Rice that gives me more than just pause outside of his issues he's been having off of the field is I don't think he's astonished me athletically for me to believe.
I disagree with you there wholeheartedly, actually.
Well, and honestly, maybe that's just kind of my bias and like I don't have a whole lot. And I ran this all last season when I was here. I don't have a lot of faith in one specific Kansas City wide receiver. Like they have proven, I mean, with Tyreek Hill being the exception, since he's left, there's not been one guy I've been like, I mean,
but in the playoff run towards the end of his first season, where where you would expect a rookie wide receiver, he got more snaps on the field. He was out there and he was performing.
That's true.
The downside is he's an underneath guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like a slot guy, sort of. I mean, the Chiefs' offense is so intricate that they use their receivers in crazy ways.
Yeah.
But he's sort of like an underneath guy. For lack of a better term, great yard after the catch guy, probably complementary piece to Xavier Worthy, but I'd rather just wait and get Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, you could be looking at other positions there to, stack your team up on at that point in time as well. If it's not that you're set on getting another wide receiver, I would invest in somebody outside of Rashee Rice.
So I get it. You want to take a few swings in tournament style where it's just like you want to be the 1% of the 1% and you want to just get yourself into the playoffs and then make a run towards the end. I think guys like Nick Chubb and Rashee Rice are great for those styles. But the way I play, which is not the version he's talking about, I'm entirely out. So I'm sort of neutral if we're talking about tournament style and entirely out if we're talking about the way I do the single league drafts where you're trying to be top 16%, not top 1.1 or 0.1%.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Sounds like you're kind of entirely out on Rashee Rice. Even when he does come back, even if it is a 4-game suspension, you're like, nah, thanks.
I don't think he's the guy that the Kansas City offense relies upon enough for me to say he's worth that draft
kind of did
capital.
Towards the end of the season, though.
That's a great point.
We're talking about Travis Kelce getting banged up.
And was last season his second year or his first
year, rookie season out of SMU.
Okay. And so that'll make more sense to me too. I remember actually, I don't know why I asked that question. I get him confused with, they have a lot of younger guys in their wide receiving room right now. So that's why I see all their names in the uniform. I see them all on the field X amount of time. And I'm like, towards the end of the season, Rashee Rice became their go-to guy. But I mean, that was after Travis Kelce had sustained outside of injuries and stuff throughout the year. And
Travis Kelce came on too. Yeah.
Yeah. So he draws a lot of looks. And so that is going to open somebody up. I mean, he's got that potential. It's just not something I find value in at that point in the draft personally.
Yeah. So you're kind of out on him too. And I get it. I'm hopeful. I'm a believer in him as an athlete, as a talent. But just the price you're paying for a guy that's going to miss at least 4 games, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, if there's like legal stuff that delays his suspension, kind of like Alvin Kamara, and you're getting him here and he gets 0 suspension, he gets pushed off, which I don't think is going to happen.
I don't think so either.
I think there's like a 5% chance of that happening. I don't think that's going to happen. But if it does, everyone's been drafting Rashee Rice, just hit a home run.
Well, and keep in mind, too, in terms of what the league has on their plate, they've already figured out that stuff with Atlanta with their contract tampering, too. So, like, I thought that was going to take a while. So we might be getting
up investigations, I think.
Yeah, they might be getting that Rashee stuff out soon.
And it sounds like legally he's kind of proceeded through like the criminal courts.
Yeah,
and he's still
pickle.
kind of working through the civil cases, I think. But I think he's going to get a suspension.
Yeah.
I think he's not going to be able to delay the progress of all this.
Suspension at this point is inevitable. It just comes down to what that longevity is going to be and when.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's move on to the 4th player.
Okay. 2 more names. Who is next?
Digging down deep.
Oh, next. Let's go to a fun team. Let's go to LA. Talk about the Rams, not Kendrick Lamar, and Blake Corum. Blake Corum. I am not one to talk backup running backs or handcuff running backs and all this other stuff. But
so Blake Corum. The whole thing that's getting me off of Blake is, look, Gus Edwards is right there.
Yeah.
I'm taking Gus. Or I'm scrolling down and finding something else. He is an expensive handcuff. I get it. If Kyron goes down, who has gone down in the past, for the first 2 seasons that he's played, Blake is going to be the guy there, and it's going to be a home run hit. So I sort of get it. I do sort of get you wanting a guy like Blake Corum, but when you go and scroll down a little bit further, and then you see guys like Braylon Allen going in the 16th, 17th round, when you see Elijah Mitchell going in the 18th round, when you see Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who has less competition in Kansas City, when you see Alexander Madison, who's going to be number 2 there
in Las Vegas,
in a much cheaper range, it just totally gets me off of it. And we don't know. I mean, they've been talking so glowingly about him. Granted, he hasn't been in pads yet. They haven't been in pads yet.
Yeah.
But they've been talking very glowingly about him, like, wise, whatever. They like him. He's a little bit older, so you'd expect that. He is coming off a knee injury from like 2 years ago or whatever, where last year he wasn't nearly as explosive as he was in his earlier years. So maybe he kind of gets that explosivity back.
Yeah. They made that sound kind of like a rehab cause thing too. Like they kept him involved because they want to keep him loose, but they were still maintaining and focusing a rehab situation for him is what it seemed like. And honestly, with
in Michigan,
with his age that he has,
23,
and his experience, because he's been playing in Michigan at a high level. I mean, they just won the college football championship, so like I don't know that has so much translation. I mean, I'm not trying to examine him for outside of his tangible athletic abilities, but if you are behind Kyron Williams, like you said, who has experienced injury issues in the past and could potentially, consistently have injury issues and any possibility. I know that you said you could look around for, there was Braylon Allen. I think I would take Blake Corum in this situation, at least in comparison to those two, if I'm going for a number 2.
But it's the cost, right?
Oh, no,
the cost is the big difference.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, you really got to
pay up for Blake Corum.
Yeah, you do have to pay up for Blake Corum. But I don't think I'm justifying the pick for him, but like I guess that would be my only argument against somebody else like a Braylon Allen, or I would much rather wait for Elijah Mitchell or
Elijah Mitchell just seems like
a great
way
value.
Better version of like the same situation where, so here's how I see that backfield. I think Blake Corum maybe takes 3-4 carries away from Kyron Williams a game. Kyron Williams stays ultra efficient, and because Blake Corum has taken those snaps away from him because they trust him, Kyron's going to stay healthy. That's the way I
true.
see it.
That's a good point.
So I get like you're going for home runs here and there, and especially in tournament style, best ball formats. I get it. Like you're going for that home run, but like, why are you paying up for that home run in like the 14th round or whatever when you can get that home run in the 17th round with Elijah Mitchell?
Yeah, and Elijah Mitchell, as we were kind of talking about in the last episode we had of your best ball draft. I mean, so there is some unproven or uncertain stuff with their roster right now where we don't know if Ayuk or Samuels might get moved at some point. There could be some change of the guard like that where their roster just has somebody who's no longer there on that team. But Elijah Mitchell holds so much more of a best case scenario RB3, RB2 at a later round for less cost.
I would admit that Blake Corum's floor is slightly higher, but that floor for both of them is just so low that it's not going to win you fantasy football.
Yeah, especially
unless there's an injury.
And like you're saying, if you're kind of hitting or you're swinging for a home run, you want to take it more safely. Elijah Mitchell, he's not a rookie running back. You know, he's got that experience already, higher ceiling indefinitely. So if both their floors are going to be roughly neck and neck on the same, you're going to you need to play this smarter and go for experience.
Yeah, when you're swinging home runs. Like, I feel like when you're paying up for a Blake Corum swinging home runs at that neck of the woods, that's like swinging for home runs when you got 2 strikes, 2 outs in the 9th inning.
Mm-hmm.
And
when you're
in the 17th, 18th round swinging for Elijah Mitchell, you still might hit it out of the park. But you're an 0-3 count in the 3rd inning with 1 runner on first or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
It's safer. It's a lot safer.
It's just safer. There's really no reason. I think for most part, I get it. Tournament style, he's got some upside, but I would just be grabbing more of Clyde and Elijah than anything else. So let's pull up his final selection.
One more, and this is a fascinating one because you might be the only person in the world that wants to draft this dude.
I love this one, by the way.
Okay.
I saw you. I don't know if it was an OG tweet from you, Josh, or did you retweet yourself? But I saw yesterday when we were supposed to do the show, and there was no commentary, no caption, just Dave Canales' his effusive praise of Jonathan Brooks. And I sat back. I'm looking at said this was a subtle
direct shot at you.
me.
Yeah,
this was a subtle. I know. I'm not new to this. I knew it was a subtle shot at me, but no. The player that I want to discuss that is my highest rostered running back in all of Underdog, Chubba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. Let me just start by saying, Josh, you and I, we are in lockstep with the Panthers team.
So this is especially for the format that I'm talking about, single league. He turned me on this. Yeah. Because I was kind of so the downside. Carolina Panthers, by far the worst offense last year.
Yes.
But they ran the ball a lot. They were, if they did anything efficiently, which they didn't do much efficiently, but if they did anything efficiently, is they ran the ball sort of all right last year.
Yeah.
And maybe they turn it around in Carolina, and maybe it is going to work. And the Jonathan Brooks hype is way overblown.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason Jonathan Brooks should be going drafted next to guys that are going to start next year, if for only one reason, the ACL. The projections 3 months ago are not matching the projections right now.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced don't expect him to be ready for the beginning of training camp, which is so important for a rookie
very important,
who's trying to earn a spot in the team. I'm not convinced that he's going to be ready for week 1.
Mm-hmm.
What if he's not cleared for week 1? That means you got a rookie coming off an ACL, which we've seen not pan out well with Jamison Williams would be the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
A first round wide receiver pick that just didn't see the field because he didn't get to practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And practice is important for rookies when they're trying to learn how to be a NFL
schematic fit in a franchise. Like that's a little bit more than, being a superstar athlete in college. Like your playbook's a little different. Like you got to be there. You got to be there in practice. You do have to be there in practice.
There's just so many things that can go wrong for Jonathan Brooks and for him to kind of pay off. And for that reason, I think that the Chubba Hubbard pick, where you're getting him, when he first said it, I was like, ooh, that seems like maybe that's not the smartest thing in the world to be doing. but you're scrolling down. Chubba Hubbard's going at 169, which is a very nice price tag for a guy who's going to be getting probably 15 carries, 20 carries in week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And in my format, when you can win in the first 5 weeks, you can build that lead in the first 5 weeks, especially with the build that I've got going on right now, where I don't have a lot of running backs and I'm going to need injuries to win this league. I'm going like super ultra zero running back. Like, yeah, I need to be taking Chubba Hubbard way, way more frequently because I'm fading Jonathan Brooks. And yeah, that offense, the ceiling's pretty low, but your floor's pretty high with that many touches.
So the only thing that I don't love about Chubba is having to be behind Miles Sanders, who to me, the only reason I have an issue with that, I don't think it's not a huge like impediment to.
I don't think Miles Sanders is going to.
No, he's not. I mean, I think Chubba Hubbard's going to be a very valuable late round piece. And I do think he's going to have a larger impact on Carolina's team running overall, especially in the red zone. I think he'll hold a lot of value there because he always has. He consistently has. And again, I'm going to fall back on, especially when you have a more experienced player in a system that he's not new to, I just expect that person's going to hold a higher value, not only to anyone willing to draft them opposing Jonathan Brooks, but also to the franchise. The franchise has more at this point invested into Chubba Hubbard. He's got more of a definitive roster spot. He holds a higher value, and that should translate to every person that might consider drafting Jonathan Brooks. I don't think that makes any sense.
It doesn't make any sense where you're paying up. So it like there was a part of me. I think I just needed somebody to tell it to me because I was like, well, I'm really fading Jonathan Brooks for a lot of different reasons. So maybe I should be getting other pieces of this backfield. And now that I actually heard someone like say it out loud, I'm like, seems like something I should be doing. I should be getting pieces of Chubba, especially with the format that I play, where week 17 doesn't matter that much. If Jonathan Brooks really does take over by like whatever their buy is, like week 10 buy or whatever, and he's just the number one there, like I'm still happy because I had a whole season of bell cow. Yeah. Bell cow touches, and the ceiling there is what if they do become an average offense? Yeah. If they become an average offense and I have a bell cow running back, like I'm winning the league.
And that's still improved from last year, which is the sad part for Carolina. But yeah, I think anyone in Carolina who was like really, really excited to get Jonathan Brooks needs to be a little bit more in the Keon Coleman mindset, where he might be a developmental guy.
I don't know about that. He's just injured.
Well, I think that's going to have a lot to play with the timeline. A franchise is going to have a projection of what you're going to do for them, right?
Yeah. He's injured. Yeah. He's injured coming into the season, and we're acting like everyone's like, well, he only had 1 year of production in college. Whenever you'd say that to anybody, they're like, well, he was playing behind Roshan Johnson. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, where is Roshan Johnson being drafted this year? Yeah. Behind Jonathan Brooks. And Roshan's healthy. All it is bring on DeAndre Swift onto the team. Roshan's going to be getting touches. But you're like, well, this guy is like a backup like level guy in the league, right? It was like, what does that say about Jonathan Brooks? Yeah. And on top of it, you add an ACL, and on top of it, you add on that he's going to be on probably one of the worst offenses in the league again. I'm all the way out on Jonathan Brooks, and at the cost of where you're like getting Chubba, I think it's a home run. I just think it's a home run. But that is all for this evening. So it sounds like we only disagreed on one or two throughout the whole experiment. Let me know if you like this. Leave a comment. If you are in and out of any of these guys, if you think Caleb Ryer is an absolute idiot, let us know. My name is Jamie Jakes. You can follow me at DRJBJakes on Instagram. You can follow me at JMJKS on X. Caleb B. Davis at FunnyCBD. Yep. On all social media platforms virtually. Thank you for being on. You have an open mic that goes on what day? Tuesdays. At where? Graffiti Pasta on the Square in Denton, Texas. Denton, Texas. So if you're into comedy or if you want to be on that open mic, you can definitely hit up Caleb B. Davis. Thank you for being on, buddy. Anything else to say to the audience? No, I loved the episodes we made today. Thank you for having me on. And
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, and good night.